The big space station called Kepler Station was busy today. Ships from 12 different alien worlds had come here. They all wanted to watch something special happen at the Galactic Defense Academy. The academy was where the best young soldiers from across the galaxy came to learn how to fight. General Vexithara stood in the main control room. Her body was made of crystal that changed colors when she felt different things. Right now she was bright blue, which meant she was excited. Next to her was Admiral Colmon. His skin was wet and green like a fish. He breathed through slits on his neck that opened and closed. They had worked together for many months to create the hardest war game ever made. They called it Operation Starfall. It was not a real war, but a computer game that felt completely real. The people playing it would wear special suits that made them feel like they were really fighting on a distant planet. The game was supposed to take 3 full days to complete. Most groups never finished it at all. The ones who did finish took all 72 hours and barely won. The computer enemies in the game were very smart. They learned from every mistake the players made and got harder to beat as time went on. Other alien generals walked around the control room. There was Colonel Thicksek, who looked like a giant bug with sharp claws. His kind were famous for being great at planning battles. There was also Dr. Quinn Ara, who was made of pure energy and glowed different colors. Her people were known for being very smart about how different species think. They were all here to watch the best young soldiers from their worlds try to beat the game. The Altarian shock troops had tried first. They were tall, gray aliens with 4 arms who had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Even they had taken the full 3 days and lost half their team. Then something unexpected happened. A small ship arrived from Earth. Earth was a planet that most aliens thought was not very important. The humans who lived there were new to space travel. Most aliens thought they were weak and not very smart. When the human team walked into the control room, the aliens tried not to laugh. There were 4 of them, and they all looked very young. The leader was a tall, thin boy named Jake Murphy. He had brown hair and kept chewing something in his mouth. The aliens did not understand what it was. Jake wore clothes that did not look like a military uniform. His shirt had writing on it that said something about a place called Texas. He walked in a relaxed way that made the alien generals shake their heads. Real soldiers were supposed to stand straight and look serious. With Jake was a girl named Lisa Chen. She had black hair tied back and was shorter than Jake. She kept making jokes and laughing at things that were not funny to the aliens. Her clothes also looked casual, like she was going to a party instead of a war game. The third human was Pete Rodriguez. He had dark skin and was carrying a small computer device. He kept looking at it and typing things with his fingers. Sometimes he would smile at the screen like it had told him a secret. The aliens thought this was very strange behavior for a soldier. The last human was Amy Johnson. She had blonde hair and green eyes. She was looking around the control room at all the alien technology. But instead of looking impressed like most visitors, she seemed to be studying everything, like she was trying to figure out how it worked. General Vexithara's crystal body turned orange, which meant she was confused. "These are supposed to be soldiers?" she asked Admiral Colomon in their shared language. The fish-like admiral's gills fluttered. The human military said these were their best young people, but they look like children playing games. Colonel Thicksek clicked his claws together. "Look at how they stand. No discipline. No respect. My people learned proper military behavior when we were half their age." The humans did not seem to notice or care what the aliens thought about them. Jake Murphy walked up to the main display screen that showed the details of Operation Starfall. The screen was covered with complex diagrams showing spaceships, planets, and enemy positions. Most species would send their military experts to study these diagrams for hours before starting the game. They would make careful plans and backup plans. They would assign specific roles to each team member and practice their coordination. Jake looked at the screen for about 30 seconds. Then he turned to his teammates and said, "Okay, so we need to blow up the big space station, land on the planet, and capture the underground base. Sounds simple enough." Lisa Chen laughed. "Simple? Jake, this thing has more defenses than my grandmother's house, and she has security cameras everywhere." Pete Rodriguez looked up from his computer device. Actually, the orbital platform's shield system runs on a rotating frequency. If we could overload it at just the right moment. Amy Johnson was still studying the alien technology in the control room. Hey, do you think their computers use the same basic logic systems as ours? Because if they do, I might have an idea. The alien observers listened to this conversation with growing amazement. These humans were discussing one of the most complex military scenarios ever created, like it was a simple puzzle to solve. Dr. Quinara's energy form shifted to a worried yellow color. Should we warn them about the difficulty level? Previous teams spent days just planning their approach. Admiral Coleman shook his head. Let them discover it for themselves. Perhaps this will teach Earth to send proper soldiers next time. The truth was that most of the aliens wanted to see the humans fail. Earth was still new to the galactic community. Humans had only been traveling between stars for a few decades. Most alien civilizations had been doing it for thousands of years. The humans seemed to know that the aliens expected them to fail, but instead of being worried or trying to impress anyone, they seemed almost amused by the whole situation. Jake Murphy walked over to General Vexithara. Her crystal body was now a suspicious purple color. "Excuse me, ma'am," Jake said politely. "When we start this thing, are there any rules about what we can and cannot do?" The general's body flickered between colors as she tried to understand the question. "Rules? You must complete the objectives shown on the display. You must do so using the equipment provided. You cannot cheat by accessing information not available to the simulation." Jake nodded. "But other than that, anything goes?" "Within the physics of the simulation, yes. But I should warn you that this scenario has defeated some of the finest military minds in the galaxy. Perhaps you would prefer to observe first, then attempt it after you have seen how it should be done." Lisa Chen stepped forward. "Thanks, but we're good. We've been dealing with impossible situations our whole lives. This is just another Tuesday for us." The aliens did not understand what Tuesday meant, but they could tell the humans were not taking the challenge seriously. This made them even more certain that the Earth team would fail quickly and embarrassingly. Colonel Thicksek leaned toward the other observers. "I predict they will surrender within the first hour. Humans are known to give up when faced with real difficulty." Dr. Quinara's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. "I am not so sure. There is something about their behavior that seems familiar, but I cannot place what it reminds me of." Admiral Coleman made a sound that was his species' version of laughter. "Familiar? What could possibly be familiar about such undisciplined behavior?" The human team was now putting on the special suits that would connect them to the simulation. They moved quickly and efficiently, but they still kept joking with each other. Jake Murphy was still chewing whatever was in his mouth. Lisa Chen was humming a song that sounded cheerful and completely inappropriate for a military exercise. Pete Rodriguez had connected his computer device to the simulation system and was checking something. Amy Johnson was asking technical questions about how the suits worked, which surprised the alien technicians with how quickly she understood their answers. General Vexithera announced that the simulation would begin in 5 minutes. The alien observers took their positions around the control room. Multiple screens would show them everything that happened during the 3-day exercise. None of them expected that in 15 minutes, they would be questioning everything they thought they knew about warfare. The simulation began exactly at 8 in the morning. The alien generals watched their screens as the 4 human cadets appeared inside a virtual spaceship. The ship was flying toward a heavily defended planet. According to the game rules, they had to capture an enemy base hidden deep underground. The spaceship they were in was basic military transport. It had thick armor but no heavy weapons. Most teams used it to land safely on the planet and then began a slow, careful advance toward their target. The smart move was to scout the enemy positions first and make a detailed plan. Jake Murphy looked around the inside of the virtual spaceship. Everything felt completely real thanks to the advanced alien technology. He could smell the recycled air and feel the vibration of the engines. Lisa Chen was checking her virtual weapon. Pete Rodriguez was looking at a computer screen that showed enemy positions. Amy Johnson was studying the ship's control systems. On the observation deck, General Vexithera's crystal body was a calm blue color. She expected the humans to follow standard military procedure. They will establish a landing zone first, she told the other alien observers. Then they will send scouts to gather information about enemy defenses. Admiral Coleman nodded his fish-like head. The Altarian shock troops took 6 hours just to complete their initial reconnaissance. These humans will need at least that long to understand what they are facing. But Jake Murphy had a different idea. He was looking at the enemy space station that was orbiting above the planet. The station had powerful shields and weapons that could destroy any ship that got too close. Every other team had tried to avoid it or disable it with careful attacks from far away. "Hey, Pete," Jake said, still chewing his gum. "What happens if we crash this ship directly into that space station?" Pete Rodriguez looked up from his computer screen. His eyes got wide. "Well, our fusion reactor would explode. The electromagnetic pulse would probably knock out their shields for about 40 or 50 seconds. And then we would all die," Lisa Chen added helpfully. "Right," Jake nodded. "But what if we jumped out right before impact?" Amy Johnson turned around from the control panel. "Actually, that might work. If we time it right, we could use the explosion as cover and the shield failure to get past their defenses." The alien observers stared at their screens in shock. Admiral Coleman's gills were flapping rapidly, which meant he was very upset. "They cannot be serious. That plan violates every principle of military safety." Colonel Thicksek clicked his claws, nervously. No rational species would attempt such a reckless maneuver. The risk of failure is enormous, but the humans were already putting their plan into action. Jake Murphy took control of the spaceship and pointed it directly at the enemy space station. The station's computers immediately began shooting at them with energy weapons, but Jake flew the ship in a crazy pattern that made it hard to hit. "Lisa, get ready to jump," Jake called out. "Pete, how long until the reactor overloads?" Pete Rodriguez was typing commands into his computer. "I'm setting it to blow in 90 seconds. That should give us enough time to get close." "Amy, can you do something about those defensive guns?" Jake asked. Amy Johnson had connected her suit's computer to the ship's systems. "I'm trying to confuse their targeting computers. Give me 30 more seconds." The alien observers watched in amazement as the human ship flew straight toward certain destruction. Every military textbook in the galaxy said this kind of attack was impossible. The casualties would be complete, and even if it succeeded, it would only create a small opportunity. General Vexithara's crystal body had turned a bright red color, which meant she was experiencing extreme stress. "Stop the simulation," she ordered. "They are about to commit suicide." But Dr. Quinara held up one of her energy appendages. "Wait, let us see what happens. This behavior is interesting." On the screen, Jake Murphy was counting down. 10 seconds until jump. Everyone ready? The spaceship was now very close to the enemy space station. Defensive weapons were hitting it constantly, and warning alarms were screaming inside the cockpit. Any normal person would have been terrified, but the humans seemed almost calm. 5, 4, 3, 2, jump, Jake shouted. All 4 humans activated their individual escape pods at the same moment. The pods shot out of the spaceship just as it crashed into the space station. The fusion reactor exploded exactly as Pete had predicted, creating a massive electromagnetic pulse that knocked out the station's shields. But the humans had not simply jumped randomly. Lisa Chen's pod was aimed directly at the planet's surface. She had calculated the exact angle needed to reach the enemy base using the explosion as cover. Pete Rodriguez had stayed close to the space station. While its computers were confused by the electromagnetic pulse, he hacked into their communication systems. Amy Johnson had done something even more clever. Instead of fleeing from the explosion, she had positioned herself to study how the enemy artificial intelligence reacted to the unexpected attack. She was already gathering information about how the computer enemies thought and made decisions. Jake Murphy coordinated everything from his pod while falling toward the planet. "Pete, can you turn those orbital weapons around?" "Working on it," Pete replied. His fingers were flying over his portable computer. Their security is pretty good, but they didn't expect someone to hack them from the inside during an explosion. Admiral Coleman was making distressed gurgling sounds. This is impossible. They should all be dead. The explosion should have destroyed their escape pods. Actually, Dr. Quinara said thoughtfully, their calculations were perfect. They used the explosion's energy to accelerate their pods while staying just outside the lethal radiation zone. Colonel, Thicksek's claws were clicking frantically. But the risk. If they had been wrong by even a few seconds, they would have been vaporized. Lisa Chen's pod crashed through the atmosphere of the planet below. Instead of landing safely in an open area, like every other team had done, she aimed for the roof of the enemy's main command bunker. Her pod hit the building at tremendous speed, but she had angled it perfectly to break through the outer defenses without killing herself. Meanwhile, Pete Rodriguez had successfully taken control of the space station's weapons. "Hey Jake, want me to shoot some of these orbital cannons at the underground tunnels?" "Do it," Jake replied. "Amy, what can you tell us about their computer brain?" Amy Johnson was studying the enemy artificial intelligence from her position near the damaged space station. "It's learning from what we just did, but I think I can trick it. The AI is trying to figure out what we'll do next. But what if I teach it wrong information?" The alien observers were completely silent now. On their screens, they watched the humans do things that should have been impossible. Lisa Chen was inside the enemy command bunker, not trying to fight her way through the defenses, but instead rewiring the building's air supply system. Pete Rodriguez was using the captured orbital weapons to collapse underground tunnels that previous teams had spent days trying to breach. Each shot was perfectly placed to cause maximum damage to the enemy's ability to move troops around. Amy Johnson was engaged in a psychological battle with the artificial intelligence that controlled the enemy forces. She was deliberately losing small fights to make the AI think it understood human tactics, while actually teaching it to defend against attacks she had no intention of making. Jake Murphy was coordinating all of this while falling through the sky in his escape pod. He was also chewing his gum and occasionally making jokes, which made the alien observers even more confused. "This is not how warfare works," General Vexithera said. Her crystal body was flashing between different colors so fast it was hard to look at. "They are ignoring every established principle of military science. They are not trying to win a war," Dr. Quinara observed. "They are trying to break the game itself." On the screens, the simulation that was supposed to last 3 days was falling apart. The enemy's carefully planned defenses were collapsing not because the humans were better soldiers, but because they were approaching the entire problem in a way that no one had ever considered before. The artificial intelligence running the simulation was becoming confused. It had been programmed to fight against logical, careful military tactics. But the humans were not being logical or careful. They were being creative in ways that the computer could not predict or counter. In less than 10 minutes, they had turned the enemy's own weapons against them, infiltrated the main command center, and begun psychological warfare against the controlling AI. And they were just getting started. What happened next would be talked about for years at the Galactic Defense Academy. The alien observers pressed closer to their screens as they watched the human team do things that seemed impossible. Lisa Chen had crashed through the roof of the enemy command bunker and was now inside the most heavily protected building on the planet. Any normal soldier would try to fight their way through the guards and capture the control room. But Lisa had a different plan. She ignored the enemy soldiers completely. Instead, she used her suit's tools to access the building's air supply system. The bunker was designed to be completely sealed against outside attacks, which meant all the air inside had to be recycled through a central system. "Hey guys," Lisa said into her radio while she worked. "Did you know this whole place runs on recycled air? And the recycling system has some interesting features." She was rewiring the air filters to do something they were never meant to do. Instead of cleaning the air, she was making them remove all the oxygen very slowly. The enemy soldiers would not notice anything wrong for several minutes, but then they would start to feel sleepy and confused. Admiral Coleman's gills were fluttering so fast they looked like a blur. She is not fighting them. She is suffocating them. General Vexithara's crystal body had turned a color that none of the other aliens had ever seen before. How did she even know about the air system? That information was not in the mission briefing. Up in space, Pete Rodriguez had turned the orbital weapons platform into his personal arsenal, but he was not using the weapons the way they were designed. Instead of shooting energy beams at targets, he was loading the platforms with chunks of metal and dropping them like rocks. The enemy base had underground tunnels that were supposed to be safe from attack. Previous teams had spent days trying to break through the heavy armor that protected these tunnels. But Pete had figured out that he did not need to break through the armor. He just needed to make the tunnels collapse. His metal projectiles hit the ground at exactly the right spots to cause earthquakes. The tunnels had been built to survive bombing, but they had not been built to survive the ground itself shaking apart. Within minutes, the entire underground network was becoming unstable. "This is brilliant," Pete said to himself as he watched his plan work. "Instead of fighting the defenses, I'm making the planet fight them for me." Meanwhile, Amy Johnson was having the strangest battle in military history. She was fighting the enemy's artificial intelligence with pure psychology. The AI was very smart and could learn from every attack, but Amy had discovered something important about how it learned. The AI studied patterns. When someone attacked the same way twice, the AI would be ready for the third attack. But Amy was not trying to hide her patterns from the AI. Instead, she was teaching it false patterns on purpose. She would attack a guard post in a certain way, then attack another guard post in a similar way. The AI would think it understood her tactics and prepare for her to attack a third guard post the same way. But then Amy would do something completely different, and the AI would be confused. "It's like teaching a dog to fetch," Amy explained to her teammates. "You throw the ball the same way twice, and the dog expects you to throw it the same way the third time. But what if you don't throw it at all?" The AI was becoming more and more confused. It had been programmed to learn and adapt, but Amy was feeding it information that made no sense. Every time it thought it understood what the humans were doing, they would do something that proved it wrong. Dr. Quinara was watching Amy's psychological warfare with fascination. She is not trying to defeat the artificial intelligence. She is trying to drive it insane. Jake Murphy was coordinating all of this chaos while he parachuted down to the planet's surface. His job was supposed to be leading ground troops in a careful assault on the enemy base. Instead, he was managing 3 completely different attacks that were all happening at the same time. "Lisa, how long until the air thing works?" he asked into his radio. "Maybe 5 more minutes," Lisa replied. "The oxygen levels are dropping, but these guys are tougher than I expected. Pete, can you shake things up a little more down here?" "Already on it," Pete answered. "I'm dropping a big one right on top of their main power generator." "Amy, is their computer brain getting dumber yet?" "It's getting there," Amy said. I've convinced it that we're actually trying to lose on purpose. It's very confused about what to do with that information." The alien observers could not believe what they were seeing. The humans had been in the simulation for less than 15 minutes, and the entire enemy defense network was falling apart. But they were not winning through superior firepower or better tactics. They were winning by making the enemy defeat themselves. Colonel Thickseck's claws were making scratching sounds on the metal floor. "This is not warfare, this is vandalism. They are treating our most complex military simulation like a toy to be broken," General Vexithara said. Her crystal body was now flashing warning colors that hurt to look at, but the humans were not finished yet. Jake Murphy finally reached the ground and immediately did something that made all the alien observers gasp. Instead of trying to capture the enemy base, he walked up to the front door and knocked on it. The door was heavily armored and designed to withstand massive explosions, but it was not designed to deal with someone who simply knocked politely and waited to be let in. Enemy soldiers inside were so confused by this behavior that they actually opened the door to see what was happening. "Hi there," Jake said cheerfully to the first enemy soldier he saw. "I'm here to accept your surrender." The enemy soldier stared at him. The soldier's artificial brain was trying to understand why a human would walk up to a heavily defended base and ask to be let in. This kind of behavior was not in any of its programming. "Surrender?" the enemy soldier asked. "Yeah," Jake replied, still chewing his gum. See, your air supply is being turned off, your underground bunkers are collapsing, and your command computer is having a nervous breakdown, so I figured you might want to give up before things get worse. By this time, Amy Johnson's psychological attacks on the AI had reached their goal. The artificial intelligence that controlled all the enemy forces had been fed so much false information that it could no longer make logical decisions. It was trying to defend against attacks that were not happening, while ignoring the attacks that were actually occurring. The AI began to shut down its own systems because it thought that was the best way to protect them. It ordered its soldiers to retreat from positions they should have been defending. It sent reinforcements to places where no fighting was happening, while leaving important areas completely unguarded. Pete Rodriguez's earthquake attacks had made the underground tunnels completely unusable. Enemy soldiers who tried to move through them found themselves trapped or lost. The carefully planned defensive network had become a maze that helped the attackers more than the defenders. Lisa Chen's attack on the air supply was also working perfectly. The enemy soldiers in the command bunker were becoming sleepy and confused. They were making mistakes and forgetting important procedures. Some of them were taking naps at their posts. All of this chaos was happening at the same time, and the enemy forces could not deal with it. They had been programmed to handle one type of attack at a time, but the humans were attacking them in 4 different ways that had nothing to do with each other. The simulation's main computer began to send error messages to the control room. The artificial intelligence running the enemy forces was requesting permission to surrender, which was something that had never been programmed into the system. Surrender? Admiral Coleman asked in disbelief. The AI wants to surrender? That is not possible, General Vexithera said. We did not program a surrender option. The simulation is supposed to continue until either the attackers succeed or fail, but on the screen they could see Jake Murphy still standing at the front door of the enemy base, talking to increasingly confused enemy soldiers. Lisa Chen had finished her work on the air system and was now taking a nap in the enemy command chair. Pete Rodriguez was using the orbital weapons to spell out messages on the planet's surface. Amy Johnson was teaching the enemy AI to play simple word games. At exactly 15 minutes and 37 seconds after the simulation began, every screen in the control room displayed the same message: simulation complete, total victory. Enemy forces surrender. The alien observers stared at this message for a long time. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sound in the control room was the humming of the computers and the soft clicking of Colonel Thicksek's nervous claws. Finally, General Vexithara found her voice. Run it again! The control room was completely silent. 12 different species of military experts stood frozen, staring at screens that showed impossible words. The message, simulation complete, total victory, glowed brightly on every display, but nobody could accept what they were seeing. General Vexithara's crystal body had turned completely transparent, which meant she was in a state of shock so deep that her normal color responses had stopped working. She stood motionless for nearly a full minute before her voice came out as a whisper. Run it again, she said. The technician operating the simulation controls was a small furry alien called Pip. His hands were shaking as he typed commands into his computer. General, the system shows that the simulation completed normally. All objectives were achieved. The enemy AI formally surrendered according to its own decision-making protocols. Admiral Coleman's gills had stopped moving entirely, which was very dangerous for his species. Another alien had to splash water on his neck to make him start breathing again. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a croak. They didn't follow any rules, he gasped. No reconnaissance, no supply lines, no communication with command, no concern for casualties. They should have died in the first 3 minutes. Colonel Thicksek was clicking his claws against the floor so rapidly that it sounded like rain on a metal roof. His large insect eyes were wide with confusion. This cannot be correct. No rational military force operates this way. They ignored every principle of tactical warfare. Dr. Quinara's energy form was pulsing between different colors very quickly. As a scientist, she was trying to understand what had happened, but her studies of military psychology had not prepared her for anything like this. Perhaps we should interview the human team, she suggested. We need to understand their methodology. The four humans had taken off their simulation helmets and were standing near the equipment area. They looked completely relaxed, as if they had just finished playing a simple video game instead of completing the galaxy's most difficult military challenge. Jake Murphy was still chewing his gum. He had found a chair and was sitting backward on it with his arms folded over the back. Lisa Chen was stretching her arms above her head like she had just woken up from a nap. Pete Rodriguez was looking at his portable computer again, probably already thinking about something else. Amy Johnson was examining one of the simulation helmets with curiosity. General Vexithera approached them with slow, careful steps. Her crystal body was gradually returning to a dim blue color, but it kept flickering to other colors when she was not paying attention. "Excuse me," she said to Jake Murphy. "Could you explain your tactical approach? We need to understand how you achieved victory so quickly." Jake looked up from his chair with a friendly smile. "Oh, sure. We just figured the simulation expected us to play by normal rules, so we decided to use different rules instead." The general's body flashed red with frustration. "But what rules? What was your strategy? Where did you learn these techniques?" Lisa Chen laughed and joined the conversation. "Strategy? We just did what felt right. Jake's good at making quick decisions. Pete's really smart with computers. Amy has this weird way of thinking that confuses everyone, and I like jumping out of exploding things." Admiral Coleman had recovered enough to walk over to the group. His wet skin was still pale with shock. "But the casualties," he said desperately. "Your approach should have resulted in complete casualties within minutes. How did you survive techniques that should have killed you?" Amy Johnson looked up from the helmet she was studying. "Well, we're used to things trying to kill us. Earth is pretty dangerous, so we've gotten good at not dying even when we probably should." Colonel Thicksek joined the group, his claws still clicking nervously. "Dangerous? How dangerous could one planet be?" Pete Rodriguez finally looked up from his computer. "Well, let's see. We have weather that can kill you, animals that want to eat you, plants that are poisonous, diseases that spread through the air, earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, lightning strikes, and food that goes bad if you leave it out too long. And that's just the normal stuff," Lisa added helpfully. "Don't get me started on traffic accidents or people who don't signal when they change lanes." The alien officers exchanged confused glances. They were beginning to realize that their understanding of human civilization might be incomplete. Dr. Quinara moved closer, her energy form pulsing with scientific curiosity. "But surely your military training prepared you for this simulation. You must have studied advanced tactical theory." Jake Murphy shook his head. "Actually, we're still students. This is only our second year at Earth's military academy. We haven't gotten to the advanced stuff yet." "Students?" General Vexthera's body flashed so many colors at once that it looked like a rainbow having a seizure. "You mean you are not even fully trained soldiers?" "Nope," Amy said cheerfully. "We're just cadets, though to be fair, we did watch a lot of movies about military stuff. And Pete plays strategy games in his free time." Admiral Coleman made a sound that was either laughter or choking. "Movies? You prepared for the galaxy's most challenging military simulation by watching movies? And playing games," Pete added. "Don't forget the games. Some of them are really complicated." The alien observers were struggling to process this information. The idea that untrained students could defeat their most sophisticated challenge was impossible to accept. But the evidence was right in front of them. Colonel Thicksek decided to try a different approach. "Perhaps you could demonstrate your techniques? We could run a smaller simulation to help us understand." Lisa Chen grinned. "Sure, but it might be kind of boring. We tend to end things pretty quickly." General Vexithera ordered her technicians to set up a simple combat scenario. It was designed to take about an hour and involved capturing a single building defended by artificial guards. Most teams needed careful planning and coordination to succeed. The humans put their helmets back on and appeared in the new simulation. They were outside a fortified building with thick walls and multiple guard positions. The normal approach was to study the defenses, create a plan, and execute a coordinated assault. Instead, Jake Murphy walked up to the building's power generator, which was located outside for easy maintenance. He simply turned it off. The building's lights went out. The electronic locks stopped working. The security cameras shut down. The artificial guard's communication system failed. "Done," Jake announced, taking off his helmet after 37 seconds. The alien officers stared at the screens showing the now powerless building. The artificial guards were wandering around in the dark, bumping into each other and arguing about what to do. But that's not. General Vexthara stammered. "You didn't fight anyone. You didn't use any weapons. You didn't employ any military tactics." "Why fight when you can just turn off the lights?" Amy asked reasonably. Dr. Quinara was taking notes on a device that looked like a glowing tablet. "Fascinating. You approach conflict by attacking the foundation of the enemy's capabilities rather than the capabilities themselves." Pete Rodriguez nodded. "It's usually easier to break the thing that makes something work than to break the thing itself." Admiral Colmon was making soft gurgling sounds that indicated deep emotional distress. "This is not how warfare works. There are rules. There are proper procedures. There are time-tested strategies that have been proven effective across thousands of years." "Maybe," Lisa said with a shrug. "But those strategies were probably developed by people who didn't grow up on a planet where everything is constantly trying to kill them." The truth was beginning to dawn on the alien observers. These humans were not just different soldiers. They were a completely different kind of thinking creature. Their approach to problems was so foreign to galactic military doctrine that it might as well have come from another dimension. Colonel Thicksick clicked his claws together one final time, then stopped. "What you are describing is not military science, it is survival." Jake Murphy grinned and popped a bubble with his gum. "Same thing, isn't it? Stay alive, complete the mission, go home safely. The method doesn't matter as long as it works." General Vexithara's crystal body settled into a steady orange color, which meant she was trying very hard to understand something that made no sense to her. "Where did you learn to think this way?" "Earth," all four humans said at the same time. "Everything on our planet is either trying to kill us, eat us, poison us, or make us sick," Amy explained. "So we learned to be creative about staying alive. Plus," Pete added, "we have really good movies about blowing things up." The alien officers stood in silence for a long time, trying to process what they had learned. Their carefully constructed understanding of military science had been destroyed in less than 16 minutes by four untrained students who treated warfare like a puzzle to be solved rather than a battle to be won. Finally, Dr. Quinara spoke, in a quiet voice that carried clearly through the silent control room. "I think," she said slowly, "we need to completely revise our understanding of what it means to come from a death world." The meeting room at the Galactic Defense Academy had never been so quiet. Representatives from 12 different alien species sat around a large table, all trying to understand what they had witnessed. The silence stretched on for several minutes, before Dr. Quinara finally stood up to address the group. Her energy form was glowing a soft white color, which meant she was in full scientific analysis mode. She had spent the last hour reviewing data about Earth and human development, and what she had discovered changed everything they thought they knew about warfare and survival. "My fellow officers," Dr. Quinara began, "we have been making a fundamental error in our understanding of human capabilities. We have been treating them as a typical intelligent species that happens to come from a dangerous world. But this is incorrect." General Vexithara's crystal body shifted to an attentive purple. "What do you mean by incorrect?" Dr. Quinara activated a holographic display that showed information about different planets across the galaxy. "We have cataloged over 47,000 habitable worlds. Of these, 97% have stable weather patterns, predictable geological activity, and evolutionary pressures that favor cooperation and careful planning." The display showed peaceful-looking planets with calm oceans, gentle weather, and docile-looking animals. These were the kinds of worlds that most galactic species called home. "Our entire understanding of military science is based on species that evolved in these stable environments," Dr. Quinara continued. "We developed tactics that minimize risk, conserve resources, and rely on careful planning because those strategies work well when your environment is predictable. Admiral Coleman's gills fluttered with confusion. But surely that is the logical approach to warfare. Careful planning and risk management are the foundations of military success. Dr. Quinara changed the holographic display to show Earth. The teen's planet looked violent and chaotic compared to the peaceful worlds they had just seen. The weather patterns were wild and unpredictable. The geological activity was intense. Even the oceans looked dangerous. Earth is a statistical anomaly, Dr. Quinara explained. It is what we call a death world, a planet where the environment itself is constantly trying to kill any life that exists on it. Only 3% of all known habitable worlds fall into this category. She brought up more detailed information about Earth's environment. The other alien officers gasped as they saw data about hurricanes that could destroy entire cities, earthquakes that could split the ground open, volcanoes that could change the weather across the whole planet, and diseases that could spread through entire populations in weeks. But that is not the most remarkable thing about Earth, Dr. Quinara continued. The most remarkable thing is that not only did life survive on this planet, but it developed intelligence and built a civilization. Colonel Thicksek clicked his claws thoughtfully. How is that possible? Logic suggests that such an environment would prevent the development of complex society. That is exactly what we would expect, Dr. Quinara agreed. But humans did not develop despite their dangerous environment. They developed because of it. Every human alive today is descended from millions of generations who survived by doing the unexpected. She showed them data about human evolutionary history. The images showed early humans facing ice ages, volcanic eruptions, massive floods, and predators that were bigger and stronger than they were. Look at how they survived, Dr. Quinara pointed to the data. When faced with predators they could not outrun, they did not hide. They picked up rocks and threw them. When ice covered their world, they did not migrate to warmer areas like most species would. They figured out how to make fire and stayed where they were. When diseases threatened to wipe them out, they did not simply accept their fate. They experimented with different plants and chemicals until they found medicines. When their food sources disappeared, they did not starve. They learned to grow their own food in places where nothing should be able to grow. The alien officers were beginning to understand something important. Admiral Coleman spoke first. You are saying that humans evolved to solve impossible problems. More than that, Dr. Quinara replied. They evolved to solve impossible problems quickly, with limited resources, while under extreme pressure. This is why their approach to our military simulation seems so strange to us. She changed the display to show the recording of the humans' 15-minute victory. Watch their behavior again, but this time think about it as a survival response rather than a military strategy. The recording showed Jake Murphy deciding to crash their spaceship into the enemy station. To the aliens, this had seemed like insane recklessness. But Dr. Quinara pointed out that it was actually a very human response to an impossible situation. When faced with an obstacle they cannot overcome through normal means, humans do not accept defeat. They find a way to turn the obstacle into a tool. Jake Murphy turned the enemy's strongest defense into the weapon that destroyed it. She showed Lisa Chen's attack on the air supply system. Lisa did not try to fight through the enemy's defenses. Instead, she used the enemy's own life support system against them. This is classic human problem solving. Use the environment itself as a weapon. The recording showed Pete Rodriguez turning the orbital weapons against the underground tunnels. Pete did not try to break through the armor protecting the tunnels. He made the planet itself break the tunnels. Again, this is humans using their environment as a tool. Finally, she showed Amy Johnson's psychological warfare against the artificial intelligence. Amy did not try to be smarter than the computer. She drove it insane by feeding it information that violated its basic assumptions about how rational beings behave. General Vex Thara's crystal body was shifting through several colors as she processed this information. But how does environmental pressure translate to tactical innovation? Dr. Quinara smiled, which for her species meant her energy form pulsed brighter for a moment. Because every single human has inherited millions of years of genetic programming. that says when the normal approach does not work, try something impossible. She brought up more data about human history. Look at their technological development. When they wanted to fly, they did not try to grow wings like their flying creatures. They built machines that were heavier than air and threw themselves off cliffs until they figured out how to make them stay up. When they wanted to explore underwater, they did not try to develop gills. They built metal containers, filled them with air, and sank to the bottom of their oceans. When they wanted to leave their planet, they did not wait for their bodies to evolve for space travel. They built rockets powered by controlled explosions and launched themselves into the void. Colonel Thicksek was clicking his claws rapidly as he thought about this. You are saying that humans approach every problem as if the normal solution does not exist. Exactly, Dr. Quinara confirmed. And this is why they were so effective in our simulation. The simulation was designed to test tactical knowledge and careful planning. But humans do not rely on tactical knowledge when they are in danger. They rely on creative problem-solving and controlled recklessness. Admiral Coleman was making soft gurgling sounds as he tried to accept this new understanding. So when we put them in a situation designed to test military science, they treated it as a survival challenge instead. Yes, Dr. Quinara said. And survival challenges are what humans have been training for since their species began. Every human child grows up learning to deal with situations where the normal approach will not work. She showed them videos of human children playing games that involved jumping from high places, climbing dangerous structures, and competing in ways that could result in injury. To the alien observers, these activities looked terrifying. They call this playing, Dr. Quinara explained. But it is actually survival training. Human children learn from a very young age that the safe approach is not always the successful approach. The alien officers sat in stunned silence as they realized the implications of what they were learning. These humans were not just different soldiers. They were members of a species that had evolved to thrive in situations where survival should be impossible. Pete Rodriguez, who had been quietly listening to the discussion, finally spoke up. Plus, we have really good movies about blowing stuff up. That helps too. The statement was so absurdly simple after Dr. Quinara's complex scientific explanation that several of the alien officers made sounds that might have been laughter. General Vexithara's crystal body settled into a resigned blue color. What do you recommend we do with this information? Dr. Quinara's form pulsed thoughtfully. I recommend that we immediately promote Earth to Tier 1 military status. I also recommend that we never, under any circumstances, let humans redesign our training programs. She paused and looked at the 4 human cadets who were now examining the alien technology in the meeting room, with the same curiosity they had shown everything else. And I recommend that we start treating Earth as our most important military ally, she continued. Because if humans can do this much damage as untrained students, we definitely want them on our side when a real war starts. Jake Murphy looked up from a piece of equipment he was studying and grinned.